Hey, welcome everybody to Distribution Strategy Group's next Technology Leader panel. Today, we're going to be talking about emerging digital tools for distributors. My name is Brian Hopkins, and I'll be soon joined by three expert panelists, Carrie Jordan from Epicor, my good friend Brooks Hamilton from Hamilton AI Strategy Advisors, and Todd Clark from Corvist. And today's show is sponsored by our good friends at Epicor. Before we get into the discussion, though, I do want to remind everyone that the show of the year is coming up very quickly. It's June 24th through 26th. That's applied for AI distributors. This is the can't miss show of the year. Not only do we have 35 plus AI enabled vendors there to help you figure out how to solve your problems, help you understand what your next move is. We've got an amazing group of speakers, from Noel Russell to Trent Gillespie, two global thought leaders when it comes to AI. Well, we've also got a great lineup of distributor executives who are on the path to AI, and they're going to share with us throughout the week what their journey looks like, what they're working on, how's it going, what things to look out for. This is a panel that you cannot afford to miss. So please sign up quickly. The show is selling out quickly. Go to appliedforAIdistributors.com or hit that QR code and we'll get you signed up right away. So today's panelists. So obviously myself, Brian Hopkins, the Chief Operations Officer here at Distribution Strategy Group, along with Carrie Jordan, the VP Product Manager Data Platform from Epicor, my good friend Brooks Hamilton at Hamilton AI Strategy, and Todd Clark, the VP of Client Success at Corvus. So welcome to the panel, and let's get it started. All right, there we go. It's good to see you guys.
Hello, great to be here.
Hey, Brian.
Hello. How's it going out there today?
Not too bad.
Awesome. So I'm glad you guys are here. I'm super excited for the conversation. But before we get started, two things. Number one, for the audience, there is a Q&A button. So if you've got a question for the panelists, please put it in there. We'll do our best to get that answered in the show. If not, we'll make sure that we get it answered after. But before we get into the discussion, why don't we start with some quick introductions? Tell us a little bit about who you are, company you represent, and what your company does. So let's kick this off with Carrie.
Happy to. All right. So thank you for the invitation. I'm so glad to be here. So my name is Carrie Jordan. I lead the product organization at Epicor. And Epicor is a leading provider of ERP and AI solutions for distributors. We have one of the largest portfolios, greatest, across the depth and breadth of distribution. Epicor is an organization that also supplies what we call the make, move, sell industries. So those are related to distribution, right? Manufacturing, building supply, retail, automotive aftermarket. And we also have quite a few, as I mentioned, AI solutions. So I'm excited to be speaking about those today. We're based in Austin, Texas, over $1 billion in annual revenue, and we're a global organization.
As a former P21 user, I can concur how good you guys are.
Thank
Brooks?
you.
Hey there. So I'm Brooks Hamilton, founder of AI Strategy Advisors. And primarily what we help our clients with is selecting the path and how to onboard for AI projects and identifying who the right vendors are for them. We also help lay out what the groundwork is for modifying your organization in order to make the best use of those new technologies. And like Epicor, we're also based in Austin.
Interesting. Great state of Texas.
Okay, hello, I'm Todd Clark. I am the VP of Client Success at Corvist. Corvist is a software company that we allow web enablement. We create self-service portals for connecting into like a real-time integration into like the SAP backends. We are targeting to distributors and manufacturers the same way, similar to Epicor, but on the website of the self-service and e-commerce portion. So I've been involved with implementations both in the e-commerce space as well as in the ERP space over the life of my so, all right, back to you.
Awesome. And we've got a great, well-rounded panel here to have a good discussion. So let's kick this off and let's talk about some of this wave of new digital tools that are out there. And some of them have great outcomes, some don't. But let's talk about what's changing and how you see leaders prioritizing that. So Carrie, I'll start off with you, and Brooks and Todd, please jump in as we have this discussion. So Carrie, what types of kind of digital tools are distributors most eager to implement right now? And what does that tell you about how the priorities have shifted?
Yeah. Okay. So there are a lot of things happening in the industry right now. I mean, we just every day hear about supply chain disruptions, tariffs, talent challenges continue. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty out there. And I think what we're seeing is a desire to really get greater visibility into the supply chain, what might happen with the supply chain. So that means getting access to data and being able to quickly interpret it, not just within your own organization, but beyond, right? Like looking out into the ecosystem, going as far upstream and potentially even downstream as possible in order to make better predictions and set yourself up for a greater outcome. What is interesting, I think way to think about this is for distributors and for a lot of businesses out there, we cannot predict exactly what's going to happen. We just can't. But we can get access, right? But we can get access to a lot of data and prepare for possible outcomes and then build that flexibility into the business to pivot as needed. And so that there are a lot of associated technologies and solutions in order to help with that. But I think that's what's really driving the recent elevated interest in solutions like automation technologies, artificial intelligence, generative and agentic AI, predictive modeling, kind of going back to more classical uses of AI, and then solutions that really help collect that data, such as product information management or PIM systems. So you can have trusted data from a variety of sources and ways to quickly understand it and create action across the business.
Yeah, trying to create that futuristic, the all trying to get that crystal ball that doesn't exist. So you guys are doing a great job with that. So Brooks and Todd, what do you guys think about what you're seeing in the way things are shifting?
I think what we primarily see is, especially as we're beginning to work with organizations on plotting their course, is trying to get better alignment in between the capabilities that their tools have and the time where people are really dedicating their energy. What we find is many of the tools are fantastic from a system of record standpoint as we kind of think about how organizations are actually spending their time. It's many times not on kind of typical record management of clients, products, and so on. It's planning, as Carrie was mentioning, exception management, and then figuring out how to communicate and execute. So we're really excited about helping organizations use the new AI capabilities that are coming out from the existing vendors on adding a new layer of capability to the organization to speed where there were not tools before, because there simply weren't the technology capabilities. But as we see Gen AI come out and more agentic type flows, it opens up all new opportunities to go from, instead of using Outlook and Excel and a paper notebook, to now get some of those things done much more quickly. So I'm really excited to see the new vendor capabilities that are emerging.
Yeah. And Todd, from your perspective, where do you see those shifts and where do you see the investment starting to play out?
A lot of the talk on the AI and machine learning, really kind of parallel with what Carrie's saying in helping understand what the customer needs are, helping understand supply chain and how that impacts inventory planning. Big area would be like in the customer self-service and kind of looking to see where is our audience today. Do you want to people want to be able to have a chat bot to talk to somebody versus trying to pick up and get stuck in a phone tree. The ability through your self-service to look up your order tracking, all the things that we do in our everyday life, we're seeing that the purchasing audience is getting younger. They expect and demand these things. And if we are not bringing that to our customers, we're going to get left behind.
Yeah, and the AI tools themselves are becoming more and more human-like. Brooks and I talked about this last week, that the chatbot that used to feel and operate like a chatbot, and you knew you were talking to a chatbot, is becoming more and more human, right? So between that and being able to use, Carrie, like you talked about, some of the predictive tools to say what's going to happen in my business, what's most likely to happen, right? Those things have never been available. And now those are coming to light. Now we're taking all the data that we've got, and the ability for us to kind of see into the future with the data is really incredible. So let's jump real quick to putting these tools in place, right? So Brooks, you spend a lot of time with leadership teams as you do your work. What do you see as some of the kind of the blind spots that that companies make when it comes to evaluating all this tech, right? Because there's a lot of different ways to go about it. So what do you see in your work in that evaluation process?
Yeah, I think two big areas. One is in how these solutions will be received by the workers within the organizations. I think among knowledge workers, this is something that's not just, hey, I might get a new version of things and address some of the prior deficiencies that we identified from application implemented 10 years ago. But now it's like, wait a minute, this is actually an emotional thing. Like, who moved my cheese? What is my role and what are my tasks going to be as I enter into this world? And so trying to figure out, like, how do I begin parsing this into my kind of talk track, and how do I ensure that this is consistent with our culture, and that people are not shocked when something is rolled out, is a bit of a gap, I think, right now, and can cause some organizations to misstep. The other thing that we see is just the, really incredible gains that have been made most recently with things like MCP servers and vibe coding, where we see that there's tremendous amounts of democratization going on for trying to describe what we're looking for, and getting access to data areas that we didn't have. So this is something that I think really deserves rethinking about what was available before and how much effort did it take to go access certain data or to go execute certain plans. I think it's an all new world there. So I would kind of boil it down to think about reception of how am I going to put things in, and then also consider what are the cost of adding capabilities, and begin to think about what the much lower deployment, or rather development costs are, and think about, how is that going to show up within what you ask for and where the bar is for the new sets of tools that are available.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, right? And change management. This is not an upgrade of a system, and it's not you know, you're going to get this new capability. This is literally changing the way people do work. So it leads me to think about, you know, from Carrie, from your perspective, and Todd, from yours, how do tech vendors now approach that part of the implementation, right? Because it's not just about getting the tech up and running and everything's going great, but it's also how do we, or how have you evolved in helping companies, you know, get to that point that after the yes, they're able to take advantage of the software?
You know, I think it's really important to ensure that you are including many across the organization, if not all, and pursuing a type of, if we're talking specifically about AI, a type of AI that is, we say people centric or human centric. AI that is not going to automatically or autonomously do things within your system without your people first reviewing it, evaluating it, and approving it. I think there's a lot of course, perception, concern, uncertainty about AI. Is this going to come and replace me, or is this going to come and empower me? And, you know, at Epicor, we pursue empowerment, so that it's really helping your people do their job faster, with higher productivity. And that then translates to business results. But I think when you're looking to bring on AI, you need to have the vision and communicate the value, the metrics, and what you intend for it to do. And, you know, be very clear about that. I think that that's how you would set your organization up for success, that this is something that you're looking to use to improve and empower your team to work faster, smarter, more efficiently, so that you can take on all kinds of disruptions that continue to come, right? And that will continue to come. And you can respond faster, more efficiently, and be ready for whatever next supply chain disruption comes.
That's great. And I love that. I love that idea is that you're empowering people. I don't know that we've used that word enough. That it's not replace, it's empower. I love that. That's perfect. So Todd, what are you seeing from that perspective?
And I would agree with Carrie there. There's a portion, like if you're looking even at like code development and writing those things, that yes, AI can help you do that. But you know, we've seen examples where you ask the AI for certain information. If you ask it a second time, it will give you a different answer. Not because the first answer was bad, but you were just looking for more information. So just because you've asked for something, what you got the first time might be better than the second or third time that you asked. So you got to be, you can't just blindly accept what you're given. You have to be able to dig in, understand. And so from a people like the replacement portion, it's good to help bring people along, get them learn faster and do things, but they still have to have the knowledge and make those decisions the same way that Gary mentioned.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We talked on our last show about how these AI agents now are human, almost like human, right? You have to onboard them like human. You have to train them like how you would respond. How does your organization operate? What are your values? So you almost have to do it like a real person, because then, if to your point, you're able to teach the AI what to do with it. So I really think AI has pushed tech vendors to think about not just implementing the technology, but any technology really, but then how do you become that partner after the fact, so that the distributor can really take advantage of what you put in. So I love that. So let's stay on that track a little bit about change management, implementation, and these things all create value, but only if it's really integrated successfully. Right. So there's many projects that, and at least in my history as well, that they've run into trouble along the way, whether it's change management, whether it's integration challenges, those things. So let's talk about, what it might take to successfully get those tools implemented effectively. So Carrie, from your perspective, then what have you noticed as you're doing implementations, kind of what does good look like, right? So when you look at a distributor that has done it really well, what are those elements that you see that can be replicated by another?
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's all about time to value. If you
Yes.
can really focus on accelerating that implementation, that is when you see success. So a couple things that we've seen. So one is visibility. So just as we talked about when incorporating AI, ensuring that there's visibility across the business into the metrics, the measures of success, the timeline, the owners, and communicating the value of the implementation. I think this is pretty fundamental. It's something that we continue to see, but only becomes more and more important as technology becomes more advanced, and people have concern about like replacing jobs, right? So it's just more and more important to give visibility and communicate across the business as to why you're making these investments. I think another major area is self-service or engagement. So being able to incorporate your team as part of the implementation itself. So that could look like, okay, this team is going to be working on this area of the business this week. Next week, it's going to be the next one. So being able to incorporate your team and have an active role, I think is a great way to facilitate the implementation timeline, but as well as give control and ownership, self-service over to your team. And then I would say a third thing that we're seeing that's starting to set apart these implementations now is using AI, as part of the implementation itself, right? Because there's so many different ways you could use, code generation, data transformation, to give visibility, data deduplication. So I think there's a lot of exciting ways that we're starting to see AI itself apply to the implementation to accelerate.
Harry, I couldn't agree more with you about that. I after spending 15 years working in implementations and B2B, primarily distribution organizations, I'm thrilled to see how AI tools can be used to communicate requirements, conduct discovery, work on code. But I think to me, the bigger pieces are running tests, developing test scripts, executing documentation. Whenever we were working on projects, we were usually like, go, go, go for discovery and build. And then you come around to testing, and you're like, whew, hope we have enough time in the project plan for that.
Great point.
That sounds really familiar.
We can
Brooks.
actually hit that much earlier in the project. I mean, there was a project team that we're working with, and they'd previously been working in a discovery and requirements process that was multi-month. We saw another team go in, spend about a day and a half conducting discovery, and came out of that with solution overview, wireframes, business requirements doc, test plan that they shared on the third day with the client. We thought, wow, that's some really great stuff in terms of how you can use AI tools to get that time to value accelerated, which I think is a great point, Carrie.
Yeah, what do you see, Todd?
So change management's the key to this. I can see, both from the successful side and from the unsuccessful, right? Where the change management group is involved to start with. It's not just the people running the project, but they are working on that end user training information, how to identify what customers are going to be brought on board. Everything from the training, but the other side of this that I've seen where it was unsuccessful is somebody bought a system, went to install it, never really thought about who their end users were until they were supposed to be live. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we only sell to government organizations and it's a self-service portal. And they could not convince the end users that there was any value for them to move forward. So that's kind of the opposite side, where if you don't have the change management, you don't think about those things beforehand, you could have a big problem at the end. But involving that up front, getting your training documentation available, getting resources available to the end users, so that if they have a question, they don't try it once, it fails and move forward. It's like, oh, they tried it, something didn't work, I got my answer, I move forward. And so you kind of breed success on top of that.
Yeah. And the idea that time to value has always been the thing with distributors. And I've talked to a lot of people recently that they're asking me, hey, how do I talk to distributors about my new product? And I always have that discussion with them that says, over the course of history, we've all invested in technology that didn't bring the value we thought. So the faster you bring that value to an organization and the more you can prove that, obviously the better. And then the way you can do that is be part of that process and part of that solution versus just here, you figure it out and we'll install the tech. So I love where we're going with that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the culture aspect, because I think that gets left off a lot, right? Because we've got a lot of legacy distributors out there, and culture is a big deal, right? We've built a really strong culture in our industry. We're very proud of it, as we should be. And we start to put in some of these digital tools, and there's organizational friction and resistance for whatever reason. So Brooks, maybe you can kind of kick us off with this one and just say, where do you see it? What have you seen work? What are some of the strategies people can take as they go down this path?
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting time to be in distribution. And part of this to me is like distribution is phenomenal in terms of the amount of data that it produces per transaction. It beats pretty much everybody else out there. So when you're looking at like organizations or rather applications which can use that data, it's super exciting to think about all the places you can go use it. But where that needs to be aligned is the how with the culture. Like so many of our distribution organizations are focused on sales, as they should be. You know, you have like two categories of problems, sales and everything else. So now when I think about an organization where the culture is sales, be great at selling, there are wonderful applications that can now be used in order to accelerate those sales aspects. But the flip side of it also is when we're going and we're looking for efficiency gains. If I'm working in an organization where it's very clear that there's a short holding period and there needs to be a strong need for hitting financial KPIs, well, probably efficiency gains are going to be a big part of the playbook. And as somebody working there, I should probably expect that. But the flip side of it is when we have organizations that are family owned, employee owned, sole owner, the culture there is likely to be quite different. It's one where there's a big bear hug for employees and talking about the team as family. So how we navigate those questions, we may think a lot more about the tags you were thinking of, Carrie, like empowerment and being more energetic and engagement, and figuring out AI solutions that support those, instead of exclusively the other E, which is efficiency. We can actually get a set of solutions which get us more progress on revenue, margin, and shockingly, employee satisfaction in addition to that customer journey. So it's like look for those and look for the solutions that fit really well into your culture and how you want to communicate.
Yeah. So well said. Well said. I would say maybe a way to then address those is how can you demonstrate value to your team? How can you get them excited through these new technologies? And so maybe two suggestions as to where like organizations could potentially start. And I think of that saying, think big, start small, fail fast kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you could potentially start someplace small, someplace that's going to have an impact that will be really aligned to your vision and supporting your team members. And maybe two ways to kind of think about that could be either start with a use case that would help everyone. And then the second one would be start with the use case that addresses some of the greatest pain within your business. So an example of the first use case could be one of the ways that we see our agentic AI so popular within our distributors is we've attached it to our learning library. And so a new user or somebody who even has been using the system for a long time, but is just curious about how can I do something better or different, you can just simply ask, how do I create a sales order? Or you can ask, a simple thing about the learning library, and that very quickly returns results. And that is just a super easy way to help everybody just be more knowledgeable within the system, drive adoption. It's also non-threatening because it's not, directly, replacing somebody's role, but it is empowering them with greater information, knowledge about how to do their job better, and maybe to get even more joy out of using the system because now you can do it easier and faster. You're learning something. And then the second way I would say is, um, like I said, pick an area of the business that has the most pain. And an example of this could be if you are getting, very detailed spec sheets or something that is, very, very complex. You can feed this into the AI. And if you need to ask things like, I don't know, how many fasteners are part of this order, or how many, if it's like an architectural drawing, how many doors, how many cabinet doors are a part, so you can start to ask these kinds of questions and it'll very quickly return information for you, interpreting a large amount of data very quickly, so that you don't have to spend all that time. And those are just two examples. There's so many more, but I think either focusing on a way that everybody could start to learn the system or focusing on a way that really solves a specific pain point in the business could be a way to start to demonstrate value very quickly.
I mean, you don't have to have a big binder in the branch on a shelf and pull it down to figure out how to enter a sales order anymore.
I mean, you could, but
that's amazing.
It could, but it might have changed since the binder was printed.
Yeah, well, you'll see a lot of binders in distribution branches, and AI is going to solve a lot of that problem. And that knowledge transfer, that's a huge piece of it. So I love that. So Todd, I'd like to hear from you on, taking these newer systems and putting them into legacy environments it's got to be a challenge, right? So what are the lessons, and Carrie, maybe you got some of those too, is what are those lessons that you've learned to say, how do you integrate those properly, and what should you be paying attention to?
So the big thing that we do or we're involved with is kind of that real-time integration. And we've got, we work to build the software that talks with your back-end system. So your web system is not a separate environment running completely independent and having to duplicate data back and forth. So, and the integrations are oftentimes more important than what the features are. So if you avoid that extra work, or what is the system of record? Which one's right? If you have that real-time integration, you don't have to deal with that question, and that will save a lot of trust in what's happening as you move through that. So that, I think, is probably one of the biggest pieces to help with that integration process, is just making sure, and that's kind of, the model that Corvus is operating on is that fashion. So there's two schools of thought. One is it's always one point of truth, and the other is high availability, right? So it's a decision that you have to kind of make in that process to drive through to understand where the best value is for you.
Yeah, I mean, distribution is a tough crowd, right? I mean, if you get the information wrong once, it's going to be tough to get them back, right? So the idea of, hey, it's got to be right, and it's got to be working for sure. All right, let's talk about the big deal is, how do you measure this stuff, right? How do you measure implementations? How do you measure success of these tools, right? Because we've all got scorecards of some degree, whether it's, customer experience, whether it's sales, whether it's operational metrics. How do we start to measure the success of these digital tools, and that we know we're getting what we thought we were going to get out of those? So Carrie, what's your perspective? What have you seen?
Yeah. Okay. So at Epicor, we work with a close group. We have a variety of advisory boards, and industry advisory boards, product advisory boards. We have an AI advisory board that we're working with, and within this organization, we have tackled this specific question that you're asking. How do you measure the impact of AI? There's so much discussion about the possibility of AI and how exciting it is, but when you get down to it, okay, how is this actually affecting our business? How is it creating measurable results? And so that is what we sought to measure and work with our distributors to understand. And I wanted to share a few proof points with you. So one such customer that we work with is a large leading wholesale distributor of heating and cooling equipment. They have been a part of our early adopter program, and we did actually just release and announce our agentic AI. It's called Prism. It's the experience within the solution that is like a user experience such that you would expect with a chatbot type, where you can ask it a natural language question and it'll return back answers for you. And we have connected agents across the portfolio. And then we also have, so that's agentic AI. We also have our portfolio of predictive AI, where that's leveraging purpose-built models that train on your data, like you use it to train within your data on our Grow data platform to enable very specific and unique predictive modeling. So you can ask what if scenarios. So it could be something like, what if this is late, how will that affect my revenue? Or if I am late to deliver this to this specific customer, how is that going to affect my bookings or my revenue going forward, right? So the two very specific types of AI. So this leading distributor of heating and cooling equipment that we were working with was using the predictive modeling, leveraging what we call Grow AI. It's those predictive models that you can use to create unique differentiators within your business. And they were using our item advisor use case. And so what this is imagine you're at the sales counter and, a customer walks up and they ask to purchase, maybe they're buying a specific type of tile, right? And so that with this tile, there are complementary items that often are sold alongside. So now you're empowering the person working the counter to say, oh, would you like, the grout, these tools to go with this, right? And there's so many, this is a very common use case of predictive AI. But this is, not like a pre-trained LLM that would, be pulling information from elsewhere. This is specific to your business. It's learning on, what you sell best alongside your items. And so this particular distributor said, and they were measuring that they could increase revenue by an estimated of 10% or more by suggesting these complementary items. And like I said, this is a pretty classic use case of AI. We all experience it when we're ordering online. You get those recommendations of what could be sold. But what's specific about distributors is of course, everyone knows is sometimes there are industry regulations about specifically what can and can't be sold. So you can't have just, pre-built LLM models suggesting things. It needs to be very specific so that you do adhere to these compliance regulations and to ensure that your customer gets the right recommendations to be sold alongside that order. So that was 10% or more. And this particular customer chose to focus on what mattered at the high level to their business, increasing revenue, so that it was a more tangible, result to the business. And that would help then accelerate implementation and adoption across other use cases.
Yeah, and those early wins are so important, right? To be able to prove, hey, this thing actually works, right? Because especially if you get into a legacy environment where it's tough sledding to try to change some of the mindset. It's this thing works, and here's the proof, right? And that's what's really important. So, Brooks, I'd love to hear your perspective on, as you work with companies specifically on AI, is how would you suggest people start to measure the effectiveness of that early so that they know, hey, we're on the right road. We think it's working well, but how do I know for sure?
On mute.
The infamous mute button.
Ooh, rookie panelist move right there. I was on.
It's all right, man.
So I'd actually like to extend on Carrie's example just a little bit.
I think Brooks
Uh,
has got such a great idea. He's frozen up.
which
All right,
was
we'll let Brooks get, hey, Brooks, you want to get reconnected here, buddy? We'll,
I, that, that
all right, we're
is
going to mute Brooks for now. He's my
or
friend, but we're going to do that. So Todd, you want to give us your perspective on that one?
Yep, I'm going to take it from a little bit different angle than Carrie. And one of the things that I want to have people think about or consider is, you know, oftentimes you're looking at either a software purchase, an IT investment. There's some hard ROI numbers that can be generated around revenue, number of orders, those types of things. The either the soft side of the ROI is the part that I don't want you to forget. That's kind of what might be termed the dark ROI. It's not as direct and measurable. But if you think about customer service events, looking up an invoice, looking up your order status, your tracking. So even if you say, okay, I had to have a customer service person do that in the past. Now I'm doing it through a self-service portal. What's that worth? Is it 3 minutes? Is it 5 minutes of their time? Is it a backlog? So one is just the being easier to do business with and establishing some arbitrary, you know, some number that makes sense to your business, and then begin to measure some of those, what would be self-service events, to be able to add that back into your ROI. It's not, you know, it's not something that makes your traditional ROI calculator, but it's something that's very key to help understanding, oh, what's the use pattern of my audience? Are they using the application? Are they more satisfied as a result of getting an immediate answer versus having to wait for an email to come in and have somebody get back to them? So that's one of the areas from an ROI standpoint that I would really say you want to make sure you're keeping an eye out for that, more of the dark ROI, because you can always get the hard numbers and get it calculated.
Yeah, the customer gets in the way, right? I mean, we've been talking all about how do we become more efficient, how do we grow more, how do we sell more, but at the end of the day, these tools do have to make the customer experience better. So I love that you went down that road. So Brooks, you're back, my friend. You had this great thing you were getting ready to say, and then you froze up.
I appreciate that. Actually, I just wanted to expand on Carrie's description. I thought it was a great example of the sales activity. When I've seen similar solutions, and they really do drive that level of sales improvement. It's like, where else can you go get a 10% bump in sales short of hiring 10% more salespeople and all the support staff behind them? The other is this was a problem that couldn't get solved before. So, you know, we don't have an extra 100 sales analysts sitting around suggesting things at the time of order. So great example there. And then it was something that the organization was able to grow with and meet a big ROI piece, which was sales velocity, without needing to take something else out of the organization. So that's one of my very favorite examples. In terms of ROI, I'm a big fan of the four horsemen of ROI of revenue, profit, CSAT, and employee SAT. And I think those are still entirely relevant. There was something earlier in our conversation, which I thought was interesting, of AI will produce errors. I think keeping an eye on error rates and not looking at what is the AI error, absolute error rate, but what was our prior error rate. Because as it turns out, when I ask somebody a question, they always give me a different answer every time that I ask.
Yeah.
Just like AI, it gives me a different answer every time I ask. So I'd love to know, like, where were your error rates before? And we hear ththings like, oh, about 40% of our orders had some type of human error, wrong product, something mislabeled, whatever it is. Okay, so were we able to take it by flipping to AI from 40% to 20%?
Right.
Okay, yeah. Do we still have some errors? Maybe so, but we're doing better than before, and chances are we're probably closing faster than we were before.
Yeah, it's that old notion that, we have zero tolerance for, technology, but we have a wide tolerance band for human error. So yeah, it's that's a great ad. It's perfect. All right, so we're coming up on the last segment here, and I want to make sure we talk about this, but as you guys do your work, what's coming next? What should people be really prepared for? Right? What's coming around the corner? Because everybody always wants to see around the corner. So I'd love to hear all your perspectives on what you see happening next.
Okay, I maybe I'll get us started here. I think we are headed for a world that is more infused with this concept of agentic AI, because what we see starting to happen is not just the ability to quickly interpret information within the business and then make faster decisions, but also the ability to automate and orchestrate action across the business. And when you take a look at what you could do within the business, that doesn't have to be the limiting factor. I think we're going to see the ability to connect your agents to your suppliers' agents, to your customers' agents, maybe within associations, industry associations, connecting those agents. And that will be kind of going back to what we talked about in the beginning, the need to get access to more and more data beyond your specific business into the broader ecosystem to better predict what could be happening within the supply chain. Where are we going to see the next disruption, and how can we best prepare our business for it? And then being able to respond very fast. I think this concept of agentic AI is going to be more and more prevalent, in the next few years.
Yeah, it's such a different world we live in, right? Instead of event, react, we're going to have the opportunity to see some of those before they even happen, because to your point, the tools will be available. So,
Yeah.
Brooks, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a really thought-provoking question. I agree on there's going to be a fair amount of agentic workflows laid down as well as connected to others. I'm particularly interested in the advent of both agent-to-agent networking as well as the implications of MCP, which are new ways of integrating in between existing data sets, and kind of you integrate once and connect many, which fundamentally I think changes the way that data is available in the organization and who can use it. Those are really exciting for us. And then finally, I think we're also seeing robotics finally, in my opinion, go somewhere after being stuck for the last 20-ish years. So, but I think we still have probably another 2-3 years until we see some large changes there. But the unit economics and automation levels there are getting closer and closer.
Yeah, Sam Altman seems to think 2027 is the year of the robot. So we'll see. We'll see how that
Sam
plays
Altman
out.
thinks 2027 is the year for everything.
That's true. All right, Todd, bring us home on that one, sir.
Yep. So as far as the analytics, adding in the AI is flowing through on that selling side. The real-time integration is here today. It's just a matter of broadening those integrations, as both Brooks and Carrie have already mentioned, that just really kind of tying those pieces together and expanding those networks, I think is really kind of where the future is coming to.
Fantastic. So we've got time for literally 30 seconds each on this last question. And it's really about, if you picture yourself sitting in front of a distribution executive and they ask you what their next digital move should be, what's going to be your response? So Carrie, since we've been kicking off with you, let's continue.
Yes. Okay, I would say get a hold of your data. I think that that is the most important aspect to prepare a strong foundation for everything that we've been talking about. And if you don't have trusted data, then the potential of AI is a bit out of reach, but there are great tools available to help. And so I would say focus on your data.
Oh,
Todd, what do you think?
with I love that new data set smell, so I couldn't agree more. Um, my recommendation would be find a great sales enablement project. Find something that's going to empower sales, get them fired up. Everybody would like to see more money in their pockets. And I think this is a great way to communicate a big win in the organization with, I think for any organization that's going to be aligned with their culture.
Yeah, that'll help drive excitement. That's for sure.
And then just from my point, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to answer that question with a question. Just what problem are you trying to solve first? Because I don't want to go deliver him something that would be, oh, here's a solution for a problem you didn't know you had or didn't care if it was solved. So that's the first thing. But then it's like considering the audience. What are the demographics of your user base? How can you help them with that self-service, real-time integration? But most importantly is to be agile in your approach. And I think Carrie mentioned it earlier, but one of the sayings that we use at Corvus is you're going to have to burn a few pancakes. So understand what that is and burn the first few and then get the rest of them right.
I love that. That's a great analogy. And I've burned a few pancakes back in the day, so that's helpful. All right, last couple things before we get out of here is we've got two things happening. And that is coming up next week. So Will Quinn, the distribution master, will be on our show. And he's going to be talking about transforming the warehouse in the age of AI. So we're really excited to have him on board, sponsored by our good friends at Fishbowl. Sign up for that one. We're gonna put a white paper out with this as well. So this is going to be a really good opportunity to understand what's happening with the warehouse side of things, because we often talk a lot about the front end, but the back end is where we're going to spend some time next week. And then the week after that, this is going to be a really special wholesale change. This is, we're going to have Janet Zelinka. She's one of the most decorated executives in distribution, and she's going to be on with Ian talking about the future of AI in distribution. So we're extremely happy to have her on board. That's a one you're not going to want to miss. So with that, I will say, panelists, thank you, Carrie, Todd, Brooks, thank you very much. It's been a great discussion, and we will talk to everybody next week.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.